I was sitting in a pub in the Cotswolds last week. Beautiful place, low beams, fireplace roaring, the smell of wood smoke and ale in the air. And I overheard a conversation that made me physically grab the edge of my table to stop myself from falling off my stool. There was this American couple, clearly on their honeymoon, looking at the date carved above the fireplace. It said 1564, and the guy, bless his heart, he turns to his wife and says, "Babe, it's so cute how they construct these theme parks to look old. They probably built this in the 1980s to match the Epcot vibes." I literally choked on my crisp theme park. Epcot vibes? This building was standing here before the concept of America was even a twinkle in a colonist's eye. But it got me thinking. I've been living here in the UK for almost 2 years now. I'm Olivia, by the way, an American transplant trying to navigate life on this rainy, beautiful island, and I have collected a vault of stories from my neighbours, my British friends, and just pure eavesdropping that prove a terrifying theory. There is a specific breed of American tourist who genuinely believes they discovered the UK, or at least that the UK only exists as a prequel to the United States. We are going to dive deep, because this isn't just about being bad at history. This is about a fundamental rewiring of the brain that happens when you grow up thinking the world started in 1776. Let's start with number 1, which I like to call the University Challenge. My neighbour, let's call him Arthur, is a professor at Oxford. He told me he once gave a tour to a wealthy donor, from the US, a guy who made his money in tech, very smart guy supposedly. They're walking through the colleges, looking at the spires, the cobblestones, the libraries that smell like ancient dust and brilliance. The American guy stops, looks at a building that was completed in the 1300s, and says, "It's nice, Arthur, really nice. It reminds me a lot of Harvard. Did you guys model this place after Harvard to attract more international students?" Arthur said he had to take a deep breath and count to 10 in Latin, because here is the reality check that genuinely breaks people's brains. Oxford University is older than the Aztec Empire. Let that sink in. Teaching began at Oxford around 1096. Harvard was founded in 1636. That is a 500-year gap, 5 centuries. To put that in perspective, by the time Harvard held its first class, Oxford had already been established for longer than the entire history of the United States, from 1776 to today. But why do Americans think this? It's what I call the Ivy League center of the universe syndrome. We are taught that the Ivy Leagues are the pinnacle of human academic achievement. We see the red brick, the green lawns, and we think, this is the original. We don't realize that the very architecture of our universities is called collegiate Gothic because it is literally trying to mimic Oxford and Cambridge. We are the cover band thinking we wrote the song, and legally, structurally, these places are different beasts. Oxford isn't just a campus, it's a federation of self-governing colleges. It's medieval corporate law in action. You don't just go to Oxford, you belong to a college that might have been founded by a bishop in the 14th century to pray for his soul. It's not about the tuition fees, which by the way are capped here by the government. Unlike the astronomically unregulated tuition in the US, it's about a lineage of knowledge that predates the printing press. Moving on to number 2, the Roman road rage. I have a friend here, Sarah, who drives a taxi in Bath. Bath is famous for its Roman baths, obviously. She picked up a family from Texas. Lovely people, very chatty. They're driving down the Fosse Way, which is this incredibly straight road. The dad is in the front seat, looking out the window, and he goes, "You know, you Brits finally figured it out. I like how straight this highway is, just like the interstates back home. Did Eisenhower come over here and show you guys how to build a grid system?" Sarah said she almost drove into a hedge. She had to explain that. No, Dwight D. Eisenhower did not consult on this road. The Romans built it in the 1st century AD. This creates a massive cognitive dissonance for Americans. We are obsessed with the grid. We think straight roads are a modern invention of the automobile age. We don't realize that the Romans were the original engineers of the straight line. They built these roads to march legions quickly across the province of Britannia. We are driving on military infrastructure that is 2,000 years old. The engineering beneath the tarmac, the layers of gravel, the drainage ditches was laid down when people were wearing togas, and this connects to a deeper psychological point. In the US, if a road is old, it's a dirt track. If it's paved and straight, it's modern. In the UK, you can be driving on a paved straight road that has seen everything from Roman chariots to Viking raiders to Victorian carriages to your rental Ford Fiesta. The landscape here isn't just scenery, it's a document, a palimpsest, and we Americans sometimes lack the literacy to read it because we're looking for the Made in USA stamp on everything. Number 3 is a personal favorite of mine, the pub misconception. I was with my cousin who came to visit. We walked into a pub in a village called Lacock. Now, Lacock is basically a time capsule. It's where they filmed Harry Potter and Downton Abbey. We walk into the pub and it's low ceilings, dark wood, dogs sleeping by the fire. My cousin looks around, wrinkles her nose, and says, ideally, we'd find somewhere a bit more established. This looks like a dive bar. Is there a chain restaurant nearby? I want to make sure the food is safe. I had to drag her outside before the landlord heard her. Here is what we get wrong. We think pub means bar. In America, a bar is where you go to drink, maybe make some bad decisions, and leave. A pub is short for public house. Historically, structurally, legally, it is the living room of the community. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the water wasn't safe to drink, so everyone, men, women, children, drank small beer or ale. The pub was where you went to get your news, your mail, your wages, and your sustenance. There are pubs in the UK that are listed in the Domesday Book of 1086. Let me repeat that, 1086. That is a census commissioned by William the Conqueror. There is a pub called the Royal Standard of England that claims to be over 900 years old. If you think a 900-year-old institution is a dive bar because the floor is uneven, you are missing the point. The floor is uneven because 1,000,000 feet have walked on it over a millennium. And the food safety thing? That's pure American paranoia. The UK has some of the strictest food standards in the world, often stricter than the FDA. We pump our cattle with hormones and wash our chicken in chlorine. The Brits have regulations that track a piece of meat from the farm to the fork. So, no, the shepherd's pie isn't dangerous, it's heritage. Number 4, the Castle Disneyland theory. I heard this one from a tour guide at Warwick Castle. A family walked up to the portcullis, the massive iron gate, and the mum tapped it with her fingernail. She turned to the guide and asked, "Is this fiberglass or papier-mâché?" It feels really realistic. You guys must have the same contractors as Disney World. The guide told me he died a little inside. He had to explain that it feels realistic because it is solid iron and stone built to withstand siege engines, arrows, and boiling oil. This is the Disneyfication of history. For many Americans, our only reference point for a castle is Cinderella's castle in Orlando. That is a construct made for entertainment. When we see a real castle, our brains try to categorize it as entertainment too. We struggle to grasp that people actually lived here. That these weren't sets, they were military fortifications. Warwick Castle was built by William the Conqueror in 1068. It has been expanded and modified, but the core purpose was domination. It stands as a symbol of the Norman conquest. The legal system of feudalism was enforced from these walls. The cost to build these things was astronomical, equivalent to billions of dollars today. They were the nuclear silos of the Middle Ages. To compare it to a theme park is to strip it of its brutal, fascinating reality. It's like looking at the Great Wall of China and asking if it's a water slide. Let's get into number 5, because this one gets me heated. The language police. I was in a hardware store of all places, buying some paint. There was an American guy arguing with the clerk about the spelling of aluminium. The American guy was getting actually aggressive, saying, "You guys add all these extra letters to sound fancy. It's aluminium. ALUMINUM. Keep it simple, like we invented it." Okay, let's do a history lesson. The element was discovered by Sir Humphrey Davy, a British chemist. He actually vacillated between names, originally calling it alumium, then alumium, and finally settling on aluminium to match the classical pattern of other elements like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. But the bigger issue here is the belief that American English is the default and British English is the variant. The truth is more complex. In the 1700s, English spelling wasn't standardized. People spelled things however they wanted. When America became independent, a man named Noah Webster, yes, the dictionary guy, decided that America needed its own linguistic identity. He consciously changed spellings to make them distinct from the British. He took the U out of color, He swapped the S for Z in realize. So when Americans say British spelling is extra, they are ignoring the fact that we are the ones who changed it. We are the spin-off series. And psychologically, it's about ownership. We dominate global media, so we assume our version is the correct one. But standing in a shop in London and correcting the spelling of the people who invented the language, that is a level of confidence I aspire to have, but never want to use. Number 6, the NHS panic. This happened to a friend of mine from Chicago who came to visit. She tripped on a cobblestone in York, classic rookie mistake, and twisted her ankle bad. It swelled up like a balloon. She started hyperventilating, not from the pain, but from the fear. She kept saying, "I can't go to the hospital, Olivia. I didn't get the international traveler's insurance. It'll cost me $5,000. I'll just limp, tape it up with duct tape." I had to physically bundle her into a taxi and take her to AANDE. That's the ER here. We walked in, she got seen by a nurse, got an x-ray, got a boot, and got some painkillers. When we went to the desk to leave, she pulled out her credit card, her hand shaking. The receptionist looked at her and said, "What's that for, love?" My friend said, "The bill." The receptionist laughed and said, "Put that away. You're all right." My friend burst into tears. She couldn't process it. She thought it was a trick. She thought the bill would arrive in the mail later and ruin her credit score. This is where the discovery is tragic. Americans discover that healthcare can be a human right, not a luxury product. The NHS National Health Service was founded in 1948, spearheaded by Aneurin Bevan, based on the ideal that healthcare should be free at the point of delivery, funded by taxation. It is the closest thing the British have to a national religion. Is it perfect? No. Are waiting times an issue? Yes. But the concept that you can be hurt and not go bankrupt is alien to the American psyche. We are so conditioned to associate care with cost that the absence of cost feels suspicious. It's a culture shock that hits you in the wallet and the heart simultaneously. Number 7, the police gun confusion. I saw this in Trafalgar Square. 2 young American guys went up to a police officer, a bobby in the custodian helmet, to ask for directions. After they got the directions, one of the guys looks at the officer's belt and says, "Wait, where's your piece? You forget your gun at the station, officer?" The officer smiled politely and said, "We don't carry firearms, sir." The American guys looked at each other like the officer had just said he patrols on a unicorn. How do you stop the bad guys then? Harsh language? This reveals such a deep divide in our societies. In the US, policing is inextricably linked to firepower. We assume authority comes from the barrel of a gun. In the UK, the philosophy is policing by consent. It was established by Sir Robert Peel in 1829. The idea is that the power of the police comes from the common consent of the public, not from the power of the state. Most officers in the UK do not carry guns. They carry tasers and batons. Yes, but the firearm is reserved for specialist units. When Americans discover this, they feel vulnerable. They project their own fears of American violence onto British streets. They don't realize that gun crime is drastically lower here because, well, there are fewer guns. It's a circular logic that breaks when you step onto British soil. The bobby isn't defenseless. He is operating in a society where an arms race between the police and the public isn't the status quo. Number 8, the England versus UK debacle. This is a geography fail that happens constantly. I was on a train to Edinburgh, Scotland. Across the aisle, an American businessman was on his phone, talking loudly. He says, "Yeah, I'm heading up to the north of England now, to Edinburgh." The Scottish conductor was punching tickets nearby. I saw his eye twitch. He leaned in and said, "Edinburgh is in Scotland, sir, not England." The businessman waved him off and said into the phone, "Yeah, same difference, it's all that little island." Oh, the cringe. The absolute cringe. This is like going to Texas and calling it South Oklahoma. It's fighting words. Here is the breakdown that Americans struggle with. The United Kingdom is a sovereign state made up of 4 nations: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. They are distinct. They have their own parliaments, devolution, their own languages. Welsh is spoken by over 800,000 people, their own legal systems. Scots law is totally different from English law, and their own sports teams. When Americans lump it all under England, it's not just a geography error, it's an erasure of identity. Scotland and England were separate kingdoms with their own monarchs until the Union of the Crowns in 1603 and the political union in 1707. They have a history of wars, rivalry, and distinct culture. Telling a Scotsman he is in England is the fastest way to make a generic enemy. Number 9, the Ancestry trap. Oh, this one is painful. I have a friend who works in a genealogy centre in London. He told me about an American woman who came in with a printout from one of those DNA websites. She slams it on the desk and says, "I'm here to claim my title. My DNA says I'm 12% British, and I traced my name back to a duke in the 1500s. Where do I go to get my castle keys?" She wasn't joking. She genuinely thought that DNA percentages translated into property rights. This comes from a very American obsession with blood. We say I'm Italian or I'm Irish because our great-great-grandfather ate a potato once. In the UK, class and titles are not just about blood. They are part of a rigid, complex legal structure involving the peerage, the House of Lords, and centuries of inheritance law. Most titles arguably went extinct or passed to distant cousins centuries ago. Being related to a duke doesn't make you a duke any more than being related to a mechanic makes you a car. Furthermore, the British find this obsession with ancestry quite odd. If you are born in America, you are American. To them, culture is where you live, pay taxes and queue for the bus, not what your DNA test says. Thinking you can walk in and claim heritage is the ultimate form of American entitlement, mixed with a misunderstanding of how the aristocracy actually works, which is mostly just managing expensive, leaky roofs. And finally, number 10, the tea time truth. I was at a fancy hotel for afternoon tea scones, clotted cream, the works. A group of American ladies were there, having a great time. One of them takes a sip of Earl Grey and says, "You know, it's so quaint that they still drink tea. I thought everyone switched to coffee after we showed them how much better it is during the war." They just cling to these old traditions for the tourists, right? I almost dropped my china cup. Cling to it for tourists. The British drink 100 million cups of tea a day. A day. It is the fuel of the nation. If the tea supply ran out, the government would collapse by Tuesday. But the coffee superiority complex is interesting. Coffee houses were actually huge in London in the 1600s and 1700s. They were the penny universities where people discussed politics and science. Tea became dominant later due to the East India Company and the Empire. It wasn't a rejection of coffee, it was an economic shift. And frankly, the quality of coffee in the UK has skyrocketed in the last 10 years, thanks Australia, but tea is emotional support. It's the answer to every crisis. Bad news? Put the kettle on. Good news? Put the kettle on. Nuclear winter? Put the kettle on. Thinking it's a tourist show is failing to understand the fundamental social lubricant of the entire society. So what have I learnt from these 10 moments? I've learnt that we Americans are taught history in a bubble. We are the main characters of our own movie, and we assume the rest of the world is just background extras waiting for us to arrive. When we come to the UK, we are confronted with a timeline that dwarfs us. We see a house that was a home before Columbus set sail. We drink in a pub that was serving ale before the Declaration of Independence was ink on parchment. It scares us a little, it makes us feel small. So our defense mechanism is to minimize it, to call it a theme park, to correct the spelling, to ask where the guns are. Because if we accept that this place is real, fully formed, and ancient, we have to accept that we are the new kids on the block. We are the teenagers of the geopolitical family, loud, confident, inventive, but lacking the deep, bone-weary wisdom of the grandparents. And honestly, that's okay. It's okay to be new, but we have to stop trying to discover a place that has been here the whole time. Instead of looking for the Epcot vibes, we should just sit down, order a pint of warm ale, shut up, and listen to the walls. Because those walls have seen things we can't even imagine. I remember one last quick story, a bonus if you will. I was walking past the Tower of London and I saw a dad pointing at the ravens. Legend has it that if the ravens leave the tower, the kingdom will fall. The dad looks at them and says, "Those look like crows. In America, we just shoot 'em." A yeoman warder, a beefeater, was standing right there. He didn't get angry, he didn't yell, he just looked at the man with 1,000 years of history in his eyes and said, "We prefer to feed them, sir. They've been here longer than any of us." And that's the mic drop. They've been here longer than any of us. So the next time you're in the UK or you hear a friend talking about their trip, listen for these moments, Listen for the confusion about the timeline. Listen for the shock about the lack of guns. Listen for the disbelief that a chair can be 700 years old. And gently, kindly remind them you didn't discover this place. You're just visiting. And that is a privilege. If you've got stories like this, maybe you've heard a relative ask if the Queen lived in a condo, or if Shakespeare was a pen name for Benjamin Franklin, drop them in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know there are others out there fighting the good fight against historical amnesia. Until then, I'm going to go find a very old pub, sit in a very old chair, and drink a pint of something that isn't cold, enjoying the fact that nobody here knows who I am, and nobody cares that I'm from the New World. Because here, new is just a relative term. Cheers, y'all.